Hey everybody, so in this video we're going to start talking about the main topic in section 4.4, which is solving quadratic inequalities. Okay, so in this video we're going to specifically talk about how to solve them algebraically, okay, and later on we'll talk about how to solve them using a different method. Okay, so here's our method for today. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is move all terms to one side. So the other side is 0, okay? So for this method, we specifically want to be comparing an inequality where one of the sides is 0, okay? Then the second thing we're going to do is solve the related equation. Okay, and what I mean by that is the equal sign instead of the inequality sign. Okay, so same equation, still 0 on one side. Okay, almost exactly the same, except you're solving an equal sign type of equation, right? Not an inequality with these guys. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is make a sign chart, but making a sign chart has several steps. Okay, so we're going to make a number line. Okay, and mark our answers from number 2. Okay. Okay. Then we are going to mark each factor as positive or negative. Okay. And then we're going to mark the product as positive or negative. Okay. This part is a little bit mysterious until you see what I'm talking about. Okay. And then our last step is going to be to write our answer as an interval. Okay, so that's why in the previous video we went over interval notation. So if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch that, or you won't be able to write out your answers. Okay, so let's look at an example. Okay, so it says solve, write your answer in interval notation. Okay, so let's see how we could do that. Okay, so my first step says to move everything to one side so that I have 0 on the other side. Okay, you can see here that I do have 0 on one side, so this is already in a good format for me. Okay, so step 2 is for us to solve the related equation. Okay, so I'm solving x plus 3 times x minus 4 equals 0. So this is what I mean by the related equation. Everything the same except for equals. Okay, so I know how to solve this. I would set each of my factors equal to 0. Oops, x minus 4 equals 0. So I get negative 3 and positive 4. Okay, so after I do that, I'm going to make a number line. Okay, and I'm going to mark these two numbers. Okay, and I'm not going to mark any other numbers on my number line, just these two. Okay, then the only other thing I'm going to do to make my sign chart to get set up is that I'm going to put my factors on the side here. Okay. All right, so this is the setup for my sign chart. Okay, and now I'm going to mark where things are positive and where they're negative. Okay, so for my first factor, all I'm thinking about is x plus 3. Okay, so I'm going to focus on this part of the number line where x is less than negative 3. So for example, x could be negative 4, negative 5, negative 10, negative 100, right? If I plug in one of those x values, for example, negative 4, I would have negative 4 plus 3, negative 1. So the answer is going to be negative. Then I'm going to think about the numbers between negative 3 and positive 4. I could think about negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, anything in between, even something like 1/2, negative 1.5. Okay, so I'll just think about 0. I would have 0 plus 3, that's 3, which is positive. Okay, and then I'm going to think about the numbers greater than 4. Okay, so I might have something like 10. 10 plus 3 is 13, which is positive. Okay, so that only has to do with x minus 3. Okay, and I'm checking a value for each one of these sections. Okay, now for x minus 4, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to pick a value over here, okay, for x, something like, I don't know, negative 6. Okay, so negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10, so this will be negative. Okay, then I'm going to pick something in here, like 1. 1 minus 4 is negative 3, so that's going to be negative again. Okay, then I'm going to pick something bigger than 4, like 5. 5 minus 4 is 1, which is positive. Okay, so I'm doing them totally separately, nothing to do with one another. Okay, then I'm going to look at the product. Okay, so remember, product is multiplication. Negative times a negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. Positive times positive is positive. Okay, so this is how you make a sign chart. Okay, and this covers steps 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so now I'm going to look for my answer. Okay, it says greater than or equal to 0. Okay, right? Greater than or equal to 0 means positive. Okay, so I know that I'm going to be talking about this part and this part because those are the positive parts. Okay, and then I'm going to write an interval for this piece and this piece. Okay, so negative infinity up to negative 3. Okay, always use parentheses here. Okay, and this is telling me, because it's greater than or equal to, okay, that I'm going to include. All right, then 4 to infinity, always use parentheses. Greater than or equal to means I include 4. Okay, when I have the two intervals, I combine them using the union. Okay. All right, let's look at another example of this. Okay. So again, everything is in an okay setup because everything's on the left. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve the related equation. Okay. So I would have x squared plus 3x minus 10 equals 0. And I'm going to solve this. Okay. So I'm going to solve it by factoring. Set each of my factors equal to 0. And I get two solutions, -5 and 2. Okay. So now I'm going to set up my sign chart. Okay, so I make my number line. Okay, and I mark my two numbers here, -5 and 2. Okay, make sure that when you're marking yours on the number line, they're in the correct order, right? You wouldn't want to put 2 and then -5 because that's not how they appear on the number line. Okay, then I'm going to put each one of my factors, x plus 5, x minus 2. Okay, the order of those does not matter. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to check some points. So I'm going to pick something that's less than -5, like -6. -6 plus 5 is -1, which would be negative. Now I'm going to pick anything between -5 and 2, so something like 0. Okay, 0 plus 5 is 5, which is positive. Okay. And then I'm going to pick something that's greater than 2. Okay, so something like 5. 5 plus 5 is 10, which is also positive. Okay, and then I'm going to repeat that process for the x minus 2 factor. Okay, so I pick something less than -5, like -6. -6 minus 2 is -8, which is negative. Okay, then I pick something between -5 and 2, like -4. -4 minus 2 is -6. That's also negative. Okay, then I pick something bigger than 2, something like 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. That's positive. Okay, and once I have the factors done separately, then I look at the product. Negative times negative is a positive. Negative times positive is negative. Positive times positive is positive. Okay. Now I'm going to see what I'm actually looking for. Okay, so greater than 0, again, is going to mean positive. Okay, so I'm looking for the pluses, which are going to be here and here. Okay, I'm looking for the plus because I know that I'm talking about positive. Okay, so the interval for this part is -infinity up to -5. Okay, and because I have greater than and not greater than or equal to, I'm going to use parentheses. Okay, then I'm going to start at 2 and it goes off to infinity. Okay, always use parentheses with infinity. And again, because I have greater than instead of greater than or equal to, I'm going to use parentheses here. Okay, and whenever I have two intervals like this, I'm going to join them with the union. Okay. All right. Let's see a third example of this method. Okay. So okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 1 from both sides so that I have everything on the same side and I'm comparing to 0. This is absolutely essential, okay, if this method is going to work. Okay. Now I'm going to solve my related equation. Okay, I'm going to try to solve this again by factoring. Okay, so these have to be 1 and 1. Okay, and I'll try plus and minus. So this gives me -2 plus 1, which is -1, and that's what I want. Okay, set each of my factors equal to 0. Okay, x equals -1/2, x equals 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make my sign chart. Okay, so I'm going to mark my two numbers, -1/2 and 1. Okay, and then I'm going to put each one of my factors, right, these factors, on the side here. So I'll have 2x plus 1, and then I'll have x minus 1. Okay. All right. Now remember, when you're plugging in points to check here, you want to plug in things that are easy to check. Okay, so I don't want to check like -3/4 or like -10.5. I just want to check something easy. Okay, so something that's less than -1/2 but is easy to check, something like -1. Okay, so I'd have 2 times -1, which is -2, plus 1 is -1, so that'll be negative. Okay. Then I'm going to check something between -1/2 and 1, right? You're picking something easy, something like 0. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1, which is positive. Okay. And something bigger than 1. Okay, so I'll just pick 3. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. That's positive. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing again here. Okay, so I'll pick something less than -1/2, something like -2. -2 minus 1 is -3, right? Negative. Something here, okay, I really think 0 is the easiest thing to plug in this interval. So 0 minus 1 is -1. That's negative. Okay, and then something big like 5. 5 minus 1 is 4, which is positive. Okay, so my product, negative times negative is positive. Negative times positive is negative. Positive times positive is positive. Okay. So once we have our sign chart all done, we're going to look at the inequality. Okay. And it says less than 0. Okay. So things that are less than 0 are negative. Okay. So in this example, we're going to be looking for the minus, which is here. Okay. So that's going to be between -1/2 and 1. Okay. Between -1/2 and 1. Okay. So then I look at my inequality, it's less than or equal to, so that means I'm going to use brackets. Okay. All right. Let's look at a couple more examples of this. Okay. So I'm going to make sure everything is on one side and 0 is on the other side. I do have 0 on this side. Okay. So now I'm going to solve the related equation. Okay. Now I can solve this using factoring, or I could solve this using square roots. Okay, either way is totally fine. But since I need the factors for the sign chart, I might as well factor. Okay, so I'm going to factor out a negative sign. Okay, and then I'm going to factor this as the difference of squares. Okay, set each of my factors equal to 0. And I get v equals negative 11, v equals positive 11. Okay, so now I'm going to make my sign chart. Okay, I'm going to mark my two numbers, negative 11 and positive 11. Okay, and then I'm going to put my factors on the side. Okay, now it is important to include all of your factors. So yes, v plus 11, yes, v minus 11, but also this negative 1 is definitely going to have an impact. So we want to put our negative 1 too. So don't forget about this. That is one of your three factors. Okay. All right. So let's test some points. We'll test something over here. Okay. So what about like negative 20? Negative 20 plus 11 is negative 9. So that's going to be negative. Okay. Test something in between these 2 points. Okay. Something like 0. 0 plus 11 is 11, which is positive. Okay. And then test something over here. Something like 12. 12 plus 11 is 23, which is positive. Okay. Do the same thing for v minus 11. So check something less than 11 like negative 12. Negative 12 minus 11 is negative 23. That's going to be negative. Okay. Test something in here. Something like 5. 5 minus 11 is negative 6. So that will be negative. Okay. And something bigger than 11. Something like 18. 18 minus 11 is 7, which is positive. Okay, negative times negative is positive. This is the product. Negative times positive is negative. Oops, I'm sorry, we're not ready for the product yet. Negative 1 is always negative, so we're just going to put negatives all the way across. No matter what x is, negative 1 is a negative number, so it's always negative. Okay, now we're going to look at the product. Negative times negative is positive, but then times another negative, this is going to be negative. Okay, 2 negatives times a positive is going to be positive. A negative times 2 positives is negative. Okay, so you're multiplying all 3 of these together to get the product. Okay, now it says less than 0, so this means we're looking for the negative part. Okay, so we're going to be talking about this part and this part. Okay, so we're going to write this as an interval. Negative infinity to negative 11, always parentheses. Okay, you can see this is just less than, so we're going to use parentheses. Okay, in 11 to infinity, always use parentheses, and because it's less than rather than less than or equal to, we're going to use parentheses. Okay, we have 2 intervals, combine them with the union. Okay. I know you guys haven't really seen the method of using these sign charts before, okay, but you will use them later on for other things. So it is an important tool, not just for this, but for other stuff, okay? So make sure you ask if you have any questions, and I will see you guys soon.